Okay. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for coming on the show. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I got a kick out of the title of your book, Weird But True Know It All U.S. Government. I think that every time I watch the news, but it's probably not the same set of facts that you have in your book.
You mean you think weird but true every time you see something about the government?
Yeah, and it just gets weirder and weirder, I think.
Yes.
But I'm looking over your bio, and the type of facts that you have in here are really more for kids, sort of to make history more interesting, more palatable for those kids that don't like history. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we give them, a lot of good factual information about how the government's structured, what the Constitution is, how it's amended, and then, going down to the government at different levels. But throughout, there's the weird, unusual, fun facts, and then the graphics too. I think that really attracts the kids because there's just such great humorous illustrations and beautiful photos. I mean, National Geographic's known for that, so that really helps make it easier, I think, for the kids to get into it.
There's a lot of books in this series. Yeah. I mean, I looked it up before we got on, and I saw it had to be at least 30 different books, sports and Middle Ages. I mean, all kinds of different ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I did the Middle Ages book. I did one on rocks and minerals. And after this book, I'm actually already working on one on climate and natural disasters. So they really cover a lot of ground with this series.
How many come out in a year? Do you know?
I don't know that for a fact. I don't know how many they have in the works at one time. Um, I don't know what else has come out recently besides this one.
Are you freelance for
I
National
am.
Geographic? Okay. So what else do you write? What else do you do?
It's mostly books for kids. I have focused on history and biography, but I've also done some science. I've done some fiction. Really, pretty much anything that piques my interest, I'll take it on. And I mean, maybe a real hard science book that I have no background in, I might pass on. But otherwise, I enjoy writing about the different subjects and learning about them. And I do some writing for adults, but not as much. It's mostly been the writing for kids and teens.
On your bio, it says that you are a historian. Do you have a particular uh, time frame of expertise?
Well, I have to quibble with that word a little bit. I think real historians would dispute that I'm a historian, and I don't have a PhD, but I have been writing about history for kids for 30 years. I was a history major. And during the course of my freelance career, I've done a lot, several areas that I've kind of specialized in the colonial era through the Constitution, World War II, Cold War. And then for biographies, I've done, everything from inventors to presidents to historical figures like Alexander the Great. So I've really it's run the gamut.
Let me ask you, when you were a kid, were you into history? Did you like it or did you hate it?
I was actually I got into it probably from my interest in baseball. I would take out books about baseball players who were no longer playing, but I just I loved reading about the players and then also World War II. My father was in World War II, and he had a collection of books that were about the U.S. Navy during the wars, like 10 volume set. And I would just sit and pour through those, and that those two things I think fed it. And then as I got older, I went into other areas of history, but mostly U.S. history. I mean, my major was focused mostly on U.S. history.
I have to admit that when I was a kid, I liked recent history, meaning the beginning of 1900 up. Anything back beyond that, I was not interested in at all and didn't see the relevance to it. But as I got older, I was more interested.
I would say the same for me. That I didn't go back before the 1900s. But I think, yeah, as you get older, you see that history, it builds on itself. You start to look at one thing, and then you go back and you see how something 50 years before influenced it. You keep going back, and you see how it's all connected in a way. I mean, that's the part of history that I've always enjoyed, and the fact that history can be so broad. It can be politics, it can be a biography, it can be the history of science. There's just so many aspects to it. I know I'm a history nerd. I actually have a blog by that name because I know most people do not get into history the way I do.
So, what's the secret to writing books for kids that's going to capture their attention?
I think the graphics are a big part, and I think the way these books are set up, the information is I call it chunked. It's little tidbits on a spread as opposed to a page or 2 pages of solid text, and so they can kind of skip around. They don't really have to read it cover to cover. I think that helps. Hopefully, I explain complicated concepts in a way that's relatable. Trying to make things connect to their lives and their experience. Obviously, they don't have a lot of experience with government at 10 or 11, but can at least point out that there are facets of government that do impact their lives, whether it's having their roads plowed in the wintertime or the postal carrier who brings their mail. I mean, those are all parts of government. So I'm hoping that the book kind of conveys that it's not just some abstract, distant thing.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the talking points here, and it is illegal to kill Bigfoot in one state. Now that is weird.
Well, that I think that was actually a county law, and I don't think it's still on the books, but for a time there was this law that made it illegal, and then if you were convicted, you could get up to 5 years. And the other Bigfoot fact that I always enjoy is the fact that the FBI has a file on not on Bigfoot himself or herself, but on an investigation into whether some fur that was found in the woods could have been from Bigfoot, but of course it wasn't.
Was this Washington State?
I believe so. I don't know for a fact. I don't have that right in front of me, but I know that the law was definitely from Washington. Yeah.
Okay, that seems to be the Bigfoot capital of America.
Yes.
That's
yes.
where everyone finds him. Well, let's cover a couple of these just to give people an idea of what the book is like. Why are there 3 branches of government?
Partly because the founders wanted to have the balance of power, not have government all in one area, and there are distinct responsibilities. I mean, the lawmaking part, the carrying out the law part in the executive branch, and then judicial. So I think I would say that was probably traces its roots to the way the Roman government was set up. I mean, they certainly had lawmakers, they had an executive and the emperor, and I don't know how strong the court system was. I mean, they did have courts, but so it traces back quite a ways back, and so much of our government does have those Greek and Roman roots. But I think it was more the separation of power, so one branch would not have all the power, and then the checks and balances that they would kind of check each other's power.
We sort of took our basic template of the judicial system from England.
Common law, right?
Yeah. But
that's true.
But the government setup is somewhat different.
Yeah, with the layers of courts, and then of course the whole idea of judicial review and precedents. Although some of those things are getting a little are changing, but yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on English court system, but I'm pretty sure our system is distinct.
Except we don't wear those awful wigs they still wear in the courts.
Right, no wigs, just the long black robes, right.
Was there ever anything that you found that you didn't believe? Says, oh no, that's just too weird.
I wouldn't say that, because I guess I figure that human beings can do extremely weird things, but and government officials in particular. But I was intrigued by some of the things people have been able to mail through the Postal Service. There was, for example, a tree trunk, a coconut, and 80,000 bricks that were mailed en masse used to build the bank. One fact about the mail system that didn't make the book was that when the parcel post service started for packages, some parents actually mailed their small children to their grandparents, I guess just to visit. And the government decided after a year or two of that, like, no, you can't mail human beings. So they stopped that.
How do you find all this stuff? I mean, where do you begin?
Well, for the nuts and bolts of government, all the government websites. I mean, there's each branch of the government has very extensive information on their websites. There are places like the Smithsonian and trying to think some of the other very reputable sources of information. And then there are different magazines will collect some of the weird facts, and I would find the facts but I would then double check, because you can't always trust what you find on the internet. So between my double checking and National Geographic's fact checkers, we we feel pretty confident that some of the weird things are true.
There's something on here about Quebec wanting to be part of the United States, but I don't know anything about that. Tell me about that.
No, that's actually, it was kind of the reverse. When the U.S. government at the time was creating the Articles of Confederation, they made the offer that Quebec could join the United States, but the Canadians weren't interested, so nothing came of it. But that was the only foreign entity they specifically said, "Hey, if you want to come join us, you can join us."
Well, from what I remember, Canada was sort of formed with the Loyalists to escape during the American Revolution, that they were still loyal to England and they didn't want to separate. Is that accurate?
Well, a lot of them ended up going to Nova Scotia after the war, but the Canadian government. I mean, Canada was a British colony from well before that. Of course, it was a French colony before that. I think that it was the 7 Years' War, French and Indian Wars, when Britain got control of almost all of France's lands in North America. So they set it up as a British colony then. But the Loyalists certainly that went there afterwards definitely influenced the development of Canada too.
Is there any one that I haven't mentioned, like a completely weird one that you want to throw out?
I was struck by some of the state symbols that state governments have passed. You think of like a tree or animal, but then there's some that are a little more off the wall. North Carolina has a state carnivorous plant, the Venus flytrap. And here in my state of New Mexico, we have an official question, which is red or green. And if you've never been to New Mexico, that wouldn't make any sense, but it refers to the color of the chili you want on your food, either red or green. And if you want both, you say Christmas. So I'm pretty sure we're the only state that has an official question.
What is up with the Maryland state flag? That is the most gaudy thing I've ever seen. It looks like a flag that they would wave at the Indy 500.
Yeah, I don't know the history of that. I know it is very busy, but I couldn't tell you more. Whereas, and then New Mexico, by contrast, is very, very simple. It's just the Zia symbol taken from the Zia Pueblo with a circle and then 4 lines coming off in each direction. It's very, very simplistic. Not simplistic, but simple and striking. But yeah, I don't know about Maryland's flag.
I suppose someday I'll have to look it up and see the significance of all of that.
Yes, but I'm sure every element has a significance, yes.
All right. Well, Michael, we got to kind of wind this down. Is the book out now? Has it been released?
The book is out. You can find it at any online book retailer. You can find it in your local bookstore. If they don't have it on the shelf, they can certainly order it. And you can also get it through the National Geographic website. Okay,
great. Last question. Do you have a website you want to give out for yourself, or?
Sure. It's my name, michaelburgan.net. I have some of my books listed there, and also some photos. I like to do photography. So there's that, but it's mostly geared towards my writing.
And Burgan is Burgan, is how you spell it,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. Well, Michael, it was nice meeting you and chatting with you, and best of luck with the book.
Thank you very much, Douglas. I appreciate it.